to order. And Beth, would you please take a roll call?
Yes, trustee Flood,
Here.
trustee Riley,
Here.
trustee Eames,
Here.
trustee Hussey,
Here.
trustee McMahon,
Here.
trustee Mishu.
Here.
That's all you have.
Thank you. And Donna may join us. We're not sure of that. I guess I would just do my duty of reminding meeting participants to leave their mic muted when not speaking. Appreciate that. We will go into executive session. So could I have a motion for the Human Resource and Labor Relations Committee of the Board of Trustees to go into executive session under the provisions of 1 MRSA Section 4056A to discuss the evaluation of personnel and consideration and discussion of appointments, evaluations, employment, and duties, and 1 MRSA Section 4056D to discuss planning for negotiations and communications with AFM, UMSA, AXM, Police, PETFA, and Service and Maintenance units. Is there a second? Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And Beth, another roll call vote, please.
Trustee Flood,
Yes.
trustee Riley,
Yes.
trustee Eames,
Yes.
trustee Hussey,
Yes.
trustee McMahon,
Yes.
trustee Mishu.
Yes.
The motion carries. I'll move you into executive session.
Thanks very much. Everybody back, looks like. And again, this is the beginning of our public agenda, the HRLR committee for the Board of Trustees, University of Maine System. And we had several tabs to go through today. Just a tab 1, annual review of the board chair, tab 2, labor relations update, and tab 3, strategic planning update. And under tab 1, that topic is it's just something I wanted to mention publicly, is that it's a duty of the Board of Trustees to every year go through an annual evaluation of our chair. And I just wanted to let people know that we have a process that we initiated with a survey. We are in the process of finalizing that, and we have that conversation with our chair in the March meeting. And that's really all I wanted to say about it. I wanted to be sure that the public knew that we go through a rigorous process, and we are in the midst of that process now, and we'll conclude it at our executive meeting in March. Any questions from anybody on the call? Thank you. The labor relations update would be presented by our Chief Human Resources Officer, Amy Parker, and Senior Labor Relations Manager, Susan Cameron. So I will turn that over to them to talk about those labor relations activities.
Thank you, Trustee Flood. I think I'll just give a quick overview, and then if folks would like to chime in, that would be certainly welcomed. Very pleased to have a brief labor relations update today. As many of you are aware, we have completed bargaining with all but one of the units that we've been bargaining with this prior year. We are continuing to bargain with our graduate student workers, and those discussions, while they did take a brief break over the holidays, are back, I believe, meeting weekly and moving along, looking at now some financial data. So all is moving along well with that group. We are also actively working with University of Maine at Presque Isle and some of our other universities at developing MOUs around competency-based education, simply because of the unique nature of that teaching modality and the way that faculty members will be paid. So those conversations are ongoing, and recently completed 1 day of a 2-day arbitration hearing with our distance education payments, and which we have with AFM, our full-time faculty union. Those discussions are ongoing and will be continuing in March. And finally, we have 2 unions that negotiations are we're starting to have conversations with them now. Negotiations will kick off this month or March, and that is with our Fraternal Order of Police and our Service and Maintenance Teamsters unions. So in addition to the graduate student workers, those 2 groups will be bargaining very soon with our labor relations team. And I would like to thank Susan Cameron. She has taken over an incredible load, given the fact that our Director of Labor Relations position is currently not filled. She took on that work in the middle of a very, very active bargaining session. She has been supported by our Chief Human Resource Officer, Amy Parker, also Eamon Purinton from our General Counsel, along with others in General Counsel and around the HR table. So my thanks to those folks for picking up the work and continuing it, and appreciate all that they're doing to move these discussions along. Happy to take any questions that folks might have, or if Susan or Amy have anything additional to add.
Great summary. Thanks, Carolyn.
Carolyn, I just had a question. When those discussions begin with the police and with the Teamsters, typically how does that happen? Where does that happen? Are they in-person meetings at the university in Portland or in Augusta or Bangor? How does that physically, how does that take place?
I think, as with everything, COVID sort of adjusted how that process works. So I'll actually turn it over to Susan to let you know how they're moving forward now.
Sure. Yes, COVID certainly did change things. So for a while, they were completely virtual meetings in around 21 when we were negotiating contracts at that time, and around 23 when we were negotiating again, we ended up with a little bit more of a hybrid. Some meetings were in person, some were on Zoom. And now here in 2025, we will certainly talk with those bargaining units and ask their preference. I would anticipate we likely might meet mostly in person as we used to do before COVID. And primarily those used to be on the Bangor campus, the UMA Bangor campus, or in Orono, where most of the union side representatives tend to be from the Orono campus. That is most often where we bargain in person. So I anticipate that's likely to be what it will look
Yeah.
like.
Thank you. I know we need to stay in our lanes on these things, but it seems to me if we're having decent kind of discussions, in person is always absolutely the fastest, best way. Probably if things aren't going well, it's probably just as well to be by Zoom. But it would seem that there might be opportunities to speed things up if the relationships are solid. That's just my 2 cents worth. And as I've said many times before, don't ever let me near a negotiating table because I'd be your worst enemy.
I do think that the hybrid model works really well, and as Susan mentioned, we do ask their preference. But it is, nice to have a few times where we meet in person, really get to kind of know the people that are around the table. And then there can be some follow-up, more brief meetings, perhaps via Zoom. It is nice to have it central because some people are traveling from different parts of the state. So the central part of the state seems to be the most convenient. And then again, having even a few that are by Zoom cuts the cost down, which is always greatly appreciated as well. So
Sure. Good.
But again,
Thank you. Thank you.
as you
They're
said-
very
Yep.
Appreciate what you've done there. I guess we'll just move on to strategic planning. Carolyn, is that
Yeah.
okay with you guys? Sure. We'll move on to that.
So under this, as you recall, we probably a year ago identified some of the different pieces of the strategic plan, the elements of the strategic plan that we would report out at some of our various board committee meetings. What we wanted to do today is have our Chief Human Resource Officer, Amy Parker, offer an update on 2 or 3 of the areas that have been identified as HRLR report outs. And so I'm really just going to turn it over to Amy and she'll give the update and then we'll entertain any questions or comments from there.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to report updates for Place to Work Action 1 and the Justice, Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion Actions 2 and 3. Place to Work Action 1 is to increase our capacity to address student and employee mental health as a prerequisite for student persistence, completion and well-being, and employee effectiveness and well-being. On January 1st of this year, our benefits team re-implemented our employee assistance program through a new vendor, ComPsych. This change came in response to feedback from our employees and supervisors. We hope to have more to report in the coming months once we have some more experience under our belt with this new vendor, but we are really optimistic about this change. Additionally, in November of last year, we launched new training for employees and supervisors entitled Supporting Employees Who Are Grieving. This is really not just about grieving the death or the loss of a person, but it just covers the myriad of losses that we may experience throughout the course of our time with UMS. So this is available on demand through our online learning platform, and the feedback thus far has been really positive. As a reminder, the Justice, Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion Action 2 states that UMS will identify and address systemic barriers to student, faculty, and staff recruitment and retention, particularly for our underrepresented and underserved populations. The Office of Institutional Equity is currently working on 2 initiatives to address potential systemic barriers, which is really their focus. The first is that they're seeking to understand our police department procedures for cease harassment notices for employees. This is going to allow us to better explain the process to individuals who receive these notices so that we can provide better guidance from our office as they're moving through various processes in the office. Additionally, staff are working with our transgender employee community to build a resource portal for individuals in support of those who are transitioning or who have transitioned. These resources vary from providing information about changing their name in our systems to connecting them with external resources. And then finally, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action 3 states that UMS and its universities will cultivate a safe and welcoming community and a genuine sense of belonging in our university and law school communities and throughout the system. In support of this action, HR launched training via Zoom and in person on handling conflict and difficult conversations, which I think was very timely given everything that is going on in our world right now. We've also built this course out in our online learning platform, UMS Academy, so that it is available on demand. And lastly, we hired our first dedicated Title IX coordinator, Crescenda Slack, for employees. This position may also support investigations of gender-based complaints for student and employees. And then that's an area that we've needed to build capacity. And that concludes the update. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Trustee Eames.
Yes, trustee Eames.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I thought I heard you say that I think it's under the second bullet, you're providing assistance to people who have been basically the subject of a harassment notice. Is that what I understood you to say, Amy?
Yes.
What are we doing for victims when they're initiating harassment notices?
So typically they're connected immediately with a Title IX coordinator if it is a gender-based complaint, and if not, we have other resources in campus depending on what the complaint is. Typically, these notices are offered to both parties, and there's just not generally an understanding of what this means for folks. They equate it to, it's an administrative process, and sometimes they equate it to a protection order, and it's simply not the same thing. So it can be really intimidating.
Okay, just as long as we're offering services as to both. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else that you wanted to follow up on, Carolyn, or?
I would
Amy?
just add one thing, and Amy, please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but she mentioned in passing UMS Academy, and I'm really pleased with that part of work, which really started a bit ago. It's not been since the strategic plan. But it used to be that a lot of these trainings were very labor intensive. They were done in person, small groups, pockets at a university. But under Amy's leadership, sorry, I should have stopped talking when I was doing good. Amy, would you tell them about UMS Academy?
Sure. So we decided in the last year to change our online learning platform to the same vendor as the one that we use for students for academic courses. And part of the thinking behind this was that it was simpler, sort of to administer behind the scenes, but also it was familiar. It was familiar to student employees because they may be interacting with that platform in their courses. And it's familiar to faculty who also need to take the compliance courses. So because this platform is much easier to navigate, to build courses, and to manage, we have been able to create a lot more custom content quicker and at the request of our employees and supervisors as they have come up with requests or needs. And that's been very helpful. But we've also been able to offer sessions via Zoom and complement them with the online learning platform, which has been really helpful as well. So if somebody attends an in-person class and they want a refresher, they can later go on and look at UMS Academy and view the materials or the recordings or classes again.
It also speaks to that piece that we talk about with our learners, wanting that real time or on their time learning. So it's been very helpful that people can access it when they need it most. And I believe that is the end of.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. I didn't have any other items. I think we had a fairly short agenda and I don't see any hands raised. I did want to thank the staff. As everybody on the call probably knows, we go through 2 or 3 meetings before we actually pull this final meeting together. And I want to thank the people who help us do that every meeting. I'm done with the work that I had to do. Anybody else? Last chance? Okay, thanks everybody for attending and we'll see you at the next one.